In this devotional, I'm going to share with you 3 thoughts from Acts 23, verses 6 through 11, where I'll ask the question, should we believe in the supernatural? Acts 23, verses 6 through 11 says, "Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, 'Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect to the hope of the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial.' And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended sharply, 'We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or an angel spoke to him?' And when the dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him away from among them by force and bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, 'Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome.'" It might be a silly sort of question to ask, should we believe in the supernatural? Because I'm guessing that if you're looking at this, that you're probably a believer, you're probably somewhat interested in the Bible, and you probably realize, hey, Bible-believing people believe in the supernatural. Or at least we should. Because a lot of folks don't recognize that there's a heavy influence of secular philosophy upon them, and they might have a whole lot of ideas that are actually anti-supernatural inherent in their thinking. So here we see from Paul, as he's talking a little bit with the council that's got him on trial, explaining that there's this divide between even religious people over whether or not the supernatural is in fact a reality. With this in mind, here are 3 thoughts from Acts 23, verses 6 through 11, answering the question, should I believe in the supernatural? Thought number 1, materialism. In modern society, materialism is a powerful force. And when I say materialism, I don't mean the desire to collect up a whole bunch of stuff. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it in a more philosophical kind of way. Materialism believing that it is only material things that exist, that there is no spiritual realm at all. Spiritual things are just a figment of our imagination. But materialism is the belief that it's only the physical that is real, that there's nothing outside of that. And there's lots of famous people on the internet talking about that these days, and they've got big audiences, and they'll make their pretty strong arguments for that case. But what they may not realize is that the Sadducees sort of had the same kind of position. Because the Sadducees, they didn't believe in things like the resurrection, they didn't believe in the spirit, they didn't believe in the angels. They believed in a strict, primitive sort of materialism. And what we find is that that is inconsistent with what's taught to us both in the Old and the New Testaments. Thought number 2, dualism. Now, dualism is what we should be adopting as believers. And when I say dualism, I don't mean dualism like there are 2 opposing forces, that it's God versus the devil and they are both equal in power or something like that. What I mean is that there are 2 separate realities. There is that in the spiritual world and that in the physical world, or the uncreated and the created. So Christian dualism recognizes that there's a significant difference between our Creator and the creation. The creation-creator distinctive, as you might have heard me talk about it before. Well, what we see, and we even see it in this chapter here, is that there is an interaction between the Creator and the creation that takes place. And normally, when that happens, the way we end up describing it is as supernatural. So when we see the miraculous works done by Paul, when we see the interaction of God with his creation, we call that supernatural. But really what's going on here is just these 2 different realities interacting with one another. God is able to transcend and come into creation. This is precisely the beauty of the incarnation, where the divine becomes man. So if you recognize the ability of God to interact with and act in creation, then you are recognizing that there is indeed supernatural activity that takes place within creation. Thought number 3, Christ's appearance. It's amazing to me that Christ appears at the end of this section. It's as if to say, look, Paul was right, because the Lord himself appears to Paul and explains to him, you did great, you did fantastic, and you're going to do the same thing in front of Caesar. You're going to do the same thing that you did here in Jerusalem. You're going to do it in Rome. You're going to proclaim the glories of Jesus Christ in the centers of power throughout the world. And Christ's appearance is a supernatural activity. So while we might have these temptations to believe that the material world is all that there is, and that all the things happening in the Bible are mere explanations or attempts at explanations of what's happening in the physical world, that just isn't the case. That isn't how the Bible presents itself to us. But instead, it presents to us this fact that the Lord, who is above all creation, enters into it and acts to accomplish his own purposes in the world so that he would be glorified and that we might ultimately be satisfied as we worship him. So yes, we should believe in the supernatural. These 3 thoughts come from the assigned reading of Acts chapters 23 and 24. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by subscribing to this channel, by clicking on the link in the description, or by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.